In 1933, the average American family had less than $5 a week for food. Not by choice, because that was everything they had. These are 5 meals that kept them alive, and most of us have completely forgotten they ever existed. Water pie. There is a dessert so humble, so born from desperation, that for generations entire families refused to admit they had ever made it. It had no fancy name, no special ingredients, no tradition passed proudly from mother to daughter. It was called water pie. And during the darkest years of the Great Depression, it was the only sweetness millions of American families could afford. To understand water pie, you have to understand what the 1930s actually felt like inside an American kitchen. There were days when the pantry held nothing but a little flour, a cup of sugar, and a jar of lard. No eggs, no milk, no fruit, no cream. The ingredients for a real dessert were simply not there. But the children were. Hungry, tired, looking at their mother with that look that every mother knows. And Grandma refused to let the day end without something sweet on the table. So she made the crust the way she always did. Flour mixed with lard and just enough cold water to hold it together. She pressed it into the pan with her hands. Then she made the filling. She poured water directly into the unbaked crust, plain tap water, mixed with sugar, a tablespoon of flour to thicken it, a small piece of the cheapest butter she could find, and a single drop of vanilla extract for fragrance. She slid it carefully into the oven, and something remarkable happened. That simple mixture of water, sugar, and flour transformed in the heat. It set, it thickened, it became something with the texture of soft custard. Not rich, not luxurious, but warm and sweet and real. The total cost of the entire pie was less than 10 cents. 10 cents fed the whole family dessert. In the 1930s, a pound of sugar cost about 5 cents. A cup of flour cost almost nothing. The entire pie required ingredients that cost less than a single postage stamp today. Water pie had other names too. Some called it depression pie. Others called it desperation pie. The names were not romantic, they were honest. They described exactly what it was and exactly when it was made. But here is the part of this story that stays with you long after you stop reading. Almost no family admitted to making water pie. Not to neighbors, not to friends, not even to other family members outside the home. Poverty carried a deep shame in that generation. The idea that your family could not afford real eggs or milk for a pie was something you kept behind closed doors. So mothers made this pie quietly. They served it warm. They watched their children eat it happily, and they never said a word about what was actually inside. That silence was not weakness. It was a form of dignity, a way of saying we may have almost nothing, but tonight we still have dessert. Today, water pie is having a small revival. Food historians and home cooks who discover it are always surprised by how good it actually tastes. But more than the flavor, what strikes people is the story behind it. The image of a mother in a bare kitchen, pouring water into a pie crust because she refused to let her family go without. That image does not leave you easily. Recipe: pie crust, 1½ cups flour, ½ cup of lard or shortening, 3 to 4 tablespoons ice-cold water, a pinch of salt. Mix flour and salt together. Cut in the lard until the mixture looks like coarse crumbs. Add cold water 1 tablespoon at a time until the dough just holds together. Press into a 9-inch pie pan. Filling: 1 cup water, 3/4 cup white sugar, 2 tablespoons all-purpose flour, 2 tablespoons butter cut into small pieces, 1 teaspoon vanilla extract. Do not stir. Bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 to 35 minutes until the filling is set and the crust is golden. Allowed to cool for at least 20 minutes before slicing. Cost in the 1930s under 10 cents for the entire pie. Fed a family of 6. Biscuits and Gravy. Every single morning across the American South and Midwest, something sizzled in a heavy cast-iron pan. Not bacon, not sausage, just fat. Meat drippings saved from the night before. The rendered grease from whatever small piece of pork the family had been able to afford that week. Poured carefully into a tin can after dinner, set aside on the back of the stove, waiting for morning. Modern people scrape this into the trash without a second thought. Our grandparents treated it like gold. Because in a household where every cent mattered, throwing away usable fat was not an option. It was waste that a family could not afford. Grandma would wake before the rest of the house. She would heat that saved fat in the pan over the wood stove. Sprinkle flour directly over the hot fat, 2 tablespoons, sometimes 3, and stir constantly with a wooden spoon until the mixture turned a pale golden color. This was the roux, the foundation of the gravy. Then came the liquid. On good weeks it was milk. On harder weeks it was water with a splash of milk. On the hardest weeks it was water alone. She poured it in slowly, never stopping the stirring. The mixture thickened, bubbled, turned into something rich and savory. She seasoned it heavily with salt and black pepper. The pepper was important. When the gravy contained no meat at all, which was often, the dark flecks floating in the white gravy created the visual impression of something more. A small trick, a quiet kindness, so the children would not notice what was missing. While the gravy simmered, she made the biscuits. No recipe card, no measuring cups most of the time. Just hands that had done this 1,000 times. Flour in a bowl, lard cut in with a fork until the mixture looked right. Cold water added slowly until the dough held together without sticking. She never overworked it. Overworked dough made tough biscuits. Pressed out flat on the floured table, cut into rounds with the rim of a drinking glass. Into the oven they went. When they came out, they had risen tall and slit slightly along the sides. Golden on top, soft and layered inside. She split them open while they were still steaming, laid them on the plate, poured the gravy over the top until it pooled in the crevices and soaked into the soft interior. That was breakfast. Hot, filling, ready in under 30 minutes from an empty kitchen. The total cost of this meal for a family of 6 was under 15 cents. In a time when a man might earn $1 a day if he was lucky enough to find work, this meal represented real value, real sustenance. Biscuits and gravy gave working people the calories they needed to get through a physical day. It stuck to your ribs the way lighter food never could. It kept you going until the next meal, and it tasted like home. Even today, Biscuits and Gravy appears on the menus of roadside diners from Tennessee to Montana. It has never left, because some meals are more than food. They are memory. They are the smell of a kitchen before the sun came up. The sound of a wooden spoon against a cast-iron pan. The feeling of being warm and full on a cold morning, when everything outside was uncertain. Recipe: biscuits, 2 cups all-purpose flour, 1/3 cup lard or shortening, 3/4 cup cold water, 1 teaspoon salt, 1 teaspoon baking powder. Mix dry ingredients. Cut in lard until crumbly. Add water gradually until dough forms. Do not overwork. Press to 3/4 inch thickness. Cut into rounds and bake at 425 degrees Fahrenheit for 12 to 15 minutes until golden. Gravy: 3 tablespoons saved meat fat or lard, 3 tablespoons flour, 2 cups milk or water, salt and generous black pepper. Heat fat in pan. Whisk in flour and stir 1 minute. Slowly add liquid while whisking constantly. Cook 5 minutes until thick. Season well. Cost in the 1930s under 15 cents. Fed a family of 6. Tuna Casserole. In the early 1940s, something new appeared on the shelves of American grocery stores: canned tuna. It was not glamorous. It was not something anyone would choose over fresh fish. But it had qualities that made it almost miraculous for families living through wartime rationing and Depression-era poverty. It was cheap. A single can cost only about 10 cents. It required absolutely no refrigeration. In a decade when many families still did not own or could not afford an electric refrigerator, this was not a small thing. It was enormous. Food that did not need to be kept cold. Food that would not spoil on the shelf. Food that was simply there when you needed it. Canned tuna changed the way millions of Americans cooked. And the dish that came to define it, the dish that appeared in community cookbooks and church recipe collections across the entire country, was tuna casserole. Grandma would open the can and drain the tuna carefully into the sink. She never wasted the liquid entirely. Sometimes she added it to the casserole for extra flavor. She cooked egg noodles in salted water until just tender. Opened a can of cream of mushroom soup. That soup cost only 10 cents and was thick enough to coat everything. She mixed the tuna, the noodles, and the undiluted soup together in a bowl. Added a splash of milk if she had it to loosen the mixture slightly. Poured everything into a greased baking dish. Then came the topping. Crushed crackers. Whatever crackers were in the house. Sprinkled generously over the top. They would bake into something golden and crisp. A texture that made the whole dish feel more substantial, more finished, more like something you had actually cooked rather than simply assembled. Into the oven at 375 degrees. 25 minutes later, the kitchen smelled of warm cream and toasted crackers. The edges bubbled. The top was golden brown. Grandma pulled it out and set it on the table. 6 people could eat from that single dish. The entire meal cost under 50 cents. During World War II, when meat was rationed and fresh protein was scarce, tuna casserole became a weekly ritual in millions of homes. It was practical, reliable, predictable, in a time when very little else was. There is a reason this dish appeared in so many cookbooks of that era. Not because it was spectacular, but because it worked. every time, with ingredients anyone could find and afford. People who grew up eating tuna casserole in the 1940s and 50s describe it with a specific kind of warmth. Not the excitement of a special meal, something quieter than that. The smell of it baking, the sound of Grandma opening the oven door, the way it looked sitting in the center of the table, a casserole dish full of something warm and complete in a world that had been neither of those things for a very long time. Recipe: 1 12-ounce can of tuna drained, 2 cups egg noodles cooked until tender, 1 10-ounce can of cream of mushroom soup undiluted, ½ cup milk, ½ cup crushed crackers for topping, salt and pepper to taste. Mix tuna, noodles, soup, and milk together in a bowl. Season with salt and pepper. Pour into an 8x8 baking dish. Top evenly with crushed crackers. Bake at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for 25 minutes until bubbling and golden on top. Rest 5 minutes before serving. Cost in the 1940s, under 50 cents. Fed a family of 6.
Egg salad sandwich. There is a moment in the history of American food when eggs quietly became the most important ingredient in the country. Not because anyone chose them, because everything else had become too expensive. During the Great Depression and through the years of World War II rationing, meat disappeared from the tables of working families. Not occasionally, for weeks at a time, sometimes for months. A pound of beef might cost 25 cents when a family had nothing to spare. But eggs were different. A dozen eggs cost only 15 cents in the 1940s. If a family kept chickens, and many did, even in cities, even in small backyards, eggs cost almost nothing at all. They were reliable. They were there every morning, and they could be turned into a filling, portable, satisfying meal in under 15 minutes. The egg salad sandwich became one of the defining foods of an entire generation. Grandma would hard-boil however many eggs she had. 6 was the usual number for a family. She peeled them while still warm and mashed them in a bowl with a fork. Not perfectly smooth, a little texture was part of it. Then came the mayonnaise. Store-bought mayonnaise existed but cost money, so Grandma made her own. Egg yolk, a little mustard, vinegar and oil whisked together by hand until it thickened. She folded the homemade mayonnaise through the mashed eggs, added a spoonful of prepared mustard, chopped pickles stirred through for crunch and brightness, salt and pepper adjusted until it tasted right. She spread it thickly between 2 slices of bread, not thin, thick, the way you spread something when you want to make sure every bite counts. That sandwich packed well. It did not need to be kept cold for a few hours. It traveled without falling apart. It showed up in the metal lunchboxes of men heading to factories and construction sites, in the paper bags of children walking to school. A reliable, familiar thing in a world that offered very little reliability. During World War II rationing, the egg salad sandwich took on even greater importance. When butter was rationed and meat was scarce, eggs remained accessible. The government actually encouraged families to eat more eggs as a patriotic act to preserve meat supplies for the military. So families ate eggs for breakfast, egg salad for lunch, eggs scrambled for dinner when nothing else was available. And nobody complained, because eggs were good, and they were there. People who grew up eating egg salad sandwiches in that era describe a very specific taste memory.
The slight tang of the pickle against the richness of the egg. The softness of the bread against the creamy filling. The way it tasted better after sitting for an hour, once the flavors had soaked into each other. It is a flavor that entire generations carried with them for the rest of their lives and quietly passed on to their children, even if the children never knew the full story behind it. Recipe: 6 large eggs hard-boiled and peeled, 3 tablespoons mayonnaise, 1 teaspoon prepared mustard, 2 tablespoons finely chopped dill pickles, salt and black pepper to taste. Mash eggs with a fork, leaving some texture. Mix in mayonnaise, mustard, and pickles. Season well with salt and pepper. Spread generously on white bread. For extra flavor, add a thin slice of onion or a few leaves of lettuce if available. Cost in the 1940s, under 20 cents for 4 sandwiches. Fed a family of 4 for lunch. Sloppy Joes. Ground beef was never the glamorous cut. It was what was left, the scraps and trimmings that fell from the butcher's block after the steaks and roasts had been sold, too mixed, too tough, too irregular to sell as anything else. The butcher ground it up and sold it cheap. And for the families of Depression-era and wartime America, cheap was exactly what they needed. A pound of ground beef in the 1930s cost about 10 cents. Compare that to a pound of steak at over 50 cents, and you understand immediately why ground beef became the foundation of so many working family meals. But here is what made Sloppy Joe's more than just a cheap meal. Grandma had a trick. When money was especially tight, when even a pound of ground beef felt like a stretch, she made that pound feed twice as many people. She mixed breadcrumbs through the raw meat, or oatmeal, soaked first in a little water until soft, then worked through the beef by hand until the mixture was uniform. 1 pound of meat became the volume of 2. The taste difference was almost undetectable once the sauce was added, and the sauce was everything. She browned the meat mixture in the pan until it had a little color, drained away the excess fat, then added ketchup, a splash of Worcestershire sauce, a pinch of sugar, salt and pepper. Sometimes a little chopped onion cooked down soft in the fat before the meat went in. The whole thing simmered together until the sauce thickened and coated every piece of meat, slightly sweet, slightly tangy, deeply savory. She spooned it onto soft round buns, piled it high, let it overflow over the sides. That was the point. A Sloppy Joe was supposed to be messy. It was supposed to overflow, because in a time when meals were often thin and careful and measured, a plate of something that overflowed felt like abundance, even when it was made from 10 cents worth of meat. Children loved Sloppy Joes in a way they loved almost nothing else, because it felt like a treat. It felt like something special, even though the people who made it knew exactly how simple and inexpensive it really was. That gap between what a meal cost and what it felt like to eat it was one of the great skills of that generation. The ability to make nothing feel like something. To transform the cheapest ingredients on the market into a dinner that a family sat down to with genuine appetite. Even today, Sloppy Joes appear in school cafeterias, at backyard cookouts, at family gatherings. The name itself has become a small piece of American culture, but very few people who eat them today know where they really came from. They came from necessity, from the ingenuity of grandmothers who refused to let their families feel poor even when they were. Recipe: 1 pound ground beef, ½ cup ketchup, 1 tablespoon Worcestershire sauce, 1 teaspoon white sugar, ½ teaspoon garlic powder, salt and black pepper, 4 soft hamburger buns. To stretch the meat, mix half-cup dry breadcrumbs soaked in 3 tablespoons of water into the raw ground beef before cooking. Brown the meat in a pan over medium heat as it cooks. Drain excess fat. Add ketchup, Worcestershire, sugar, garlic powder, salt, and pepper. Stir well and simmer on low heat until sauce thickens. Spoon generously onto buns. Cost in the 1930s under 30 cents with bread. Fed a family of 8, 5 meals, each one born from a kitchen with almost nothing in it. Each one fed families through years that most of us will never fully understand. The Great Depression took jobs, savings, and certainty from an entire generation of Americans, but it did not take their resourcefulness. It did not take the knowledge in their hands. It did not take the love that went into every simple dish they placed on the table. If your grandmother made any of these meals, she probably never told you how hard those years really were. She just cooked. She just fed you, and she called it dinner. If this brought back a memory, or if you learned something today about the people who came before us, leave it in the comments below. We read every single one. Subscribe to join us as we continue uncovering the forgotten foods and the forgotten stories of American history. See you in the next one.